Coming up on episode 66 of the Behind the Back podcast, De'Aaron Fox heroics keep the Kings alive while some injuries are happening. The Eagles flying high. Do they have an actual chance for the 1 seed? The Niners, are they cooked? Oh man, Ben's got some hot takes there. And Chargers, they're doing good, man. We'll put that in, plus our betting picks of the week. Guys, we got a fun episode here, so without further ado, let's get it. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your host. I am Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me here, as always, is Ben the Jet. Rets, Ben. I would want to ask you how you're doing, but I kind of already have an idea of how you're doing. But
do you?
for the sake of everyone out there, how you doing?
I'm actually fantastic. Life is really good. The Niners are balling. The Kings are balling. It's great all around. We'll talk about it.
So, as you guys heard in the intro, we're going over some fun topics today. So we, as always, will start with our Kings. And listen, last time we spoke, they added 2 more wins to the win counter. Great. Could have had 4, but I mean, they've had some tough circumstances here. Last time we talked about them, the concern was, will they find their shooting? And it seems like they did. They just needed our motivation, us bringing it up for, the 5th time this year to kind of get them going. But throughout this 4-game stretch, they were shooting 3-pointers at a 43% clip. So it looks like they've found their shooting again. But the Kings have also been dealing with more injuries, and that's to Domas and DeMar. So 3 out of our 4 best players have been missing for the last 2 games. Domas went out in the Minnesota game. But there's been one main reason why this team has been afloat and has survived some losing 3 out of our 4 best players. And it's because our best player did something special. Ben, do you want to elaborate?
I would love to. So, in that Timberwolves game where we lost Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox kept his team afloat, and he put up 60 points. And unfortunately, there were some late game antics that let this game get away from the Kings. But the next night, I was worried. I was like, man, they just played an overtime game. Foxy's going to be exhausted. There's no way he can put this team on his back 2 nights in a row. Well, he did. And he came back with a 49-point game. And that's 109 points in 2 nights. That marks him as the 3rd player in NBA history to lay down such a stat line in a back-to-back span. The first player was Wilt Chamberlain, who, by the way, did that 15 times. And then Kobe Bryant in, I think it was 2000, I want to say 9. And that was, years ago was the last time that anything like that had happened where you 109 points or more in 2 games. So his back has got to be hurting now.
Yeah, shout out to Fox for stepping up. I mean, in the Minnesota game, to add a little bit more to it, we were down 20 in that game.
Yeah.
And then Fox and the team really caught fire. And what made that more important was it was an in-season tournament game. So yes, we lost. That sucks. But the point differential thing does matter. And to only lose by, I believe it was 4 points that game, to have that kind of point differential was kind of huge. Because had we lost by 20, we were probably already out of it. And every in-season tournament game doesn't matter. From a point differential standpoint, it'll just focus on getting wins. But that was huge. And to see the resilience that this team has played with, losing these guys has been really important. We mentioned last week that you had Trey Lyles, I had Keon Ellis, that we were hoping these dudes would step up in the absence of all these stars. And we got to see a lot of new faces enter the fold, with Mason Jones getting minutes, Orlando Robinson finally getting minutes for us now that he's back from injury. Was there anything that stood out to you that you learned from this team with all of our stars out?
Yeah, it's the resiliency. They didn't go out. Every time that they would go down big, they would mount a comeback of some kind. They would scratch and claw their way back. And it just showed an aspect of this team and an identity for this team that they can really rally behind going on throughout this year. And that's something that is crucial, especially as a team who is trying to find an identity on both the offensive and the defensive end of the floor. As you start to kind of see these identities play out and unfold, for this team to be able to figure that out as a game goes on, whether they're down by 2, up by 10, down by 20, and just stick to their guns and find their way back into a game, it's huge. It's something that we didn't see last year. It was like last year they would be down 20 and they'd stay down by 15 and then 10, but they would never really make that full push. And it just felt like there was a lack of presence when that team would go down. And that's something that this year seems to have changed.
Yeah, and fortunately that has kept us afloat during this time. Obviously, Foxy's scoring barrage has been incredible, and he's played really, really well. But, Keon hit 9 threes last night against the Hawks. That was a career high, a career showing for him. That was the summer league Keon I was hoping for. And, Trey's looking like he's finding his rhythm. We're getting good minutes from McLaughlin. Like, guys are stepping up. And that for me, the curious part, now that we always knew Fox was special when he's the kind of player that worked when he gets a rhythm from generating inside out. Like if he's getting in the paint, if he's hitting his mid-range shots, then his three-point shot just follows. Versus when he starts trying to shoot from three and trying to get hot from three, and then he gets a little too trigger happy because he gets too comfortable back there. But do you think when there's been reporting that DeMar and Domas should be available for the next in-season tournament game that we have on Friday against LA, the Clippers, and do you think that Foxy should take this aggressive approach and really just because I feel like early in the season we kind of saw him defer and the team kind of try and defer and spread the ball around, right? And I don't mind that at all. Fox's assist numbers were high, but I kind of like it when he's just the first option every time and let him just get downhill and create for this offense. What do you want to see when we get DeMar and Domas back into the fold?
So I'll start this off by saying De'Aaron Fox is far and away the best player on this team. His what he brings on a nightly basis, offensively and defensively, the collective package that he brings on both sides of the ball is something that no one else on the team provides. Other guys are more valuable than Fox in other ways, but when you're talking about the most valuable player to the team right now, to this Kings team, it's De'Aaron Fox, and he really is like the guy, the go-to guy at any given time. Now, with that being said, if this Kings team wants to really take the lid off of their offensive woes that we've seen in the early stages of this season, it starts with Fox being aggressive. The best version of the Kings is when they have an aggressive Fox. And when Fox is aggressive, getting downhill, getting a rebound, and just moving the ball down the court, like teams are at that point doubling up on him, even triple teaming him on that side of the floor, leaving guys like, who are you going to leave open? DeMar? You're going to leave Keegan open? Like, okay, you're going to double off of Domas and then get a mismatch? Like, when Fox is dominating, teams aren't going to understand, or they'll understand, but they won't know how to shut this team down at that point. You could probably shut down Foxy, but there's 4 other guys out there who are and have proved to be offensively lethal. And that's the part of this team. Like, if Fox just gets going, if he finds his rhythm inside the paint, because that's where he's the most effective, the inside of the paint and that mid-range game. If he gets that going, these teams, man, they're not going to be able to defend the Kings.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that Fox should be the engine that drives the ship. And then guys like DeMar, because the 20 points are going to come naturally. DeMar just has to take like 8 shots a game to really get 20 because he'll get to the free throw line as well. I think that, especially once these guys come back, and that includes Malik too, they'll be able to stagger Fox's minutes a little bit better to where he's not having to play 38, 39 minutes like he is right now, because he is our main source of offense right now. So I think that, they're just getting by. They were just able to get by. And listen, they lost by 1 point to Atlanta, and it was questionable. A couple bad calls, a couple bad bounces didn't go our way, sloppy turnovers at the end, but like, we were right there. And same with Minnesota, we were right there. We did a great job against Phoenix. And that was without DeMar too. It was just Fox and Domas doing their thing, and everyone was just fine hitting their shots. So I think collectively this offense is starting to get their confidence as a whole team, and this starts from now it's down to the bench players too. It's kind of that time without the stars have allowed these bench players to find themselves a little bit better and gain the confidence needed. So now once these guys come back, Mike can really just situationally throw anyone in there. Maybe maybe it's gonna be more of a Keon game off the bench, or maybe it's gonna be more Jordan, or maybe it's a Dougie McDermott game. Like he'll have more options now that these guys kind of figured out their own roles within this team. So I am excited to see how this looks when they all come back. And I think the crappy part about all this is that we have to deal with the injury bug this early into the season. I didn't think, especially with Domas, I didn't think that was going to be happening. So it is a little bit frustrating that we have to deal with that.
Yeah, and that was kind of inevitable. We talk about that historic season from an injury standpoint. It was historic where the Kings 2 years ago, they really didn't see any injuries, and especially to that core five, that starting five group. And then last year you started to kind of see it, but especially at the end of the season when you lose Herter, you lose Monk, and those injury, the games missed starts to add up, right? But then this year, missing the core guys, not just the starting five, but the core guys, the way that you have to start the year. And it's tough because you're trying to establish a rhythm early on in the season, but you're running into these, injuries where now you've got to find a different identity through different guys who won't be seeing the court in the next 2 weeks when we get those core guys back. So I'm not going to sit here and say that they don't have their identity now that they have, the core guys coming back. I think they've figured a lot out and they've found a lot out about this team in the last week and a half. But it's going to look different. The 3 games that we really just played without our core, they were Kings games that didn't feel like Kings games. Even the game where Foxy put up 60 points and then 49, I would be surprised if we see Foxy put up 60 and 49 again this year, even without
Right.
the core guys there. It would be surprising to me because it took a Herculean effort from him to keep this team in it in a lot of ways. And yeah, you can't shout him out enough. But I do, without talking about it, I do want to just kind of shed some light to how poor the officiating has been. I don't like to go on like our podcast or use officials too much as an excuse, but it feels like both NFL and NBA have been just on a tear with inconsistent officiating in so many games, and especially the Kings games this year. Like the last 2 minute reports have come out. Some of them obviously have not been favoring the Kings. And it just feels like every time this team starts to find a rhythm throughout a game, there's going to be some calls that go the other way. And this is where this team needs to find like their true identity, because they can't be expecting to go to the free throw line more than the other team. You can't be expecting to get the calls that you want. Mike Brown went on his post-game presser after the last game, and they asked him about, the foul calls and the lack thereof, rather. And he almost gave like a backhanded compliment to Trae Young. And he said, well, he's really great. He's really great at flopping his head back and selling the call. And he kept using that, selling the call. Fox doesn't do that. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Fox needs to flop, but it would be interesting to see if this team were to, rather than beat you with strength and beat you with finesse, if this team was to throw their head back when they're driving down the lane or, exaggerate something a little bit more, how many more calls would we get and how many more games would we win at that point? It's interesting.
I think the funny part about it too is like, listen, like for the early stretch when everyone was healthy there, we were leading the league in free throws. Like, so there was at the beginning there where that was kind of the case. But there's also been instances this year with like DeMar where he's not getting the same calls that he has been getting his whole career here. That some of those calls that he would have gotten on the Bulls or the Spurs or even the Raptors, he's not getting those same kind of calls here. And I think that's funny. And Domas has been treated like apparently nobody does enough to actually foul him in game
Right.
because he's just so dominant. He gets the DeMarcus Cousins treatment. Like, because he's so physical and so strong, they think that his set of rules for getting foul calls is a different standard. I'm watching dudes just hug him the whole time, swipe his arm, scratch him. He gets elbowed 5
He
times a
gets hit
game.
in the face
Yeah.
every single game. Every day that ends in Y, he's hit in the face.
It's not, and it's sad because it's a running joke between the announcers. They do it every single time. Katie Christensen brings
Yeah.
it up every single time. Oh, the game doesn't start until Domas gets hit in the face, and it shouldn't be that way. And even on those instances, nothing gets called. So I just think it's funny. He's DeMarcus Cousins without the text. Like, he doesn't get any calls, and I think at this point it's hard to play a downhill style that these guys like to play. Like, for De'Aaron, like, I completely understand, like, there are going to be games where he wants to pull back because he's like, I'm not going to sacrifice myself if I'm not getting rewarded for it. And it's hard to throw your body into these guys 20 times a game and only get the reward 2 out of those 20 times. Like, Fox, and I think it's funny when Foxy, whenever, whenever he gets an and one call, or whenever he actually does get a call, he's not arguing with the ref. He's arguing with the player who's arguing, because Fox is like,
I've
I'm not
noticed that.
I'm not complaining without a reason. It's he always calls the other guy out, and I think it's hilarious. But, like, I think it's the reality that we live in, that we don't get those same we listen, like, there are games where it is even, and we don't talk about those games all the time, but it is, more often than not, here in the city of Sacramento, when the Kings play, they don't get the same luxury that other teams do, and
Yeah.
it is frustrating.
And that's not to say that if like you go to the box scores and you look at the overall game, like the free throw differential isn't much. Even the foul call differential isn't much, but it's the lack of calls that the Kings get. They should be averaging 20 plus free throws a game. Like that's not, to me, that's not crazy, because we see how much Domas gets the ball down low, how many times he gets hit, how many times he gets pulled to the ground, how many times Foxy gets hit on the elbow or the shoulder, or he takes a body blow, going down the lane, and he doesn't get a call. And that's the part of it where it's like, we should have like 6 or 7 more foul calls and free throw opportunities than whoever we're playing, because the simple part is, there's not many players who can guard Domas, and there's not many players that can guard De'Aaron or DeMar. And for those guys in the style that the Kings play, that dribble handoff, it creates so many open drives down the lane. Teams have no really way to defend it except to really foul them or
Right.
make a great defensive play. So it's just frustrating. Again, I don't want to like talk too much about it. We'll shift gears here and we'll talk about the Gold Cup in a second. But it's something that this team's got to kind of figure out. They've got to figure out how to win even without these things going their way, because you're going to continue seeing it. We've already seen it this year with the foul calls and the lack of. It's going to continue happening. You have to find ways to win the little battles everywhere else throughout the game so that you're not in a position like that at the end when it counts.
Right. And again, it's, we love, this is a safe space. We need to vent in the sense of, like, because we see this every game. We watch this team enough. I
It's
know
tough.
we talk to people around the city who understand, like, people that we talk to about the Kings, they feel the same way that we do. And obviously, officiating is poor all over the league, so it's really inconsistent. But it's not just that we could be getting more calls, it's also the way that sometimes calls seem very one-sided, where, especially like the big man, right? Like Minnesota, Rudy Gobert was getting calls that Domas wouldn't get. And I'm like, if they're gotta call it both ways in that sense. If you're not gonna if you're
Right.
gonna call Domas on a ticky-tack foul for Rudy, you gotta do it the other way. Show consistency. And I wonder if it's going to do something like what we saw last year during the All-Star break, right? Like, after the All-Star break, all of a sudden it changed into this playoff level physicality where they were letting guys just play and get
Mm-hmm.
away with it. So I wonder if, Mike Brown's just preaching the message, like, just don't back down, keep playing aggressive. It's going to eventually go our way for being the more physical team. But I think for now, it's like, we're just going to have to take it as it is. And like you said, win the little battles everywhere else. And on nights where we're shooting well and we're not turning the ball over and shooting ourselves in the foot, we should be winning most of those games. And listen, we're dealing with injuries and we're hanging in there. So, the West is congested. We knew it was going to be tough. But we're still in a position where if we break off 5 or 6 or 7 straight games, all of a sudden we're looking at the top of the conference. So it's one of those things where, yeah, the West is daunting. And despite that, we've been hanging in there despite dealing with injuries that normally, if this was a Kings team of old, could have crippled our season already. But guys, we have the veteran presence and the young guys have stepped up. So let's take a look at, what we expect, because let's say, we're going to have DeMar and Domas supposedly, not officially confirmed, but the reports are looking like they're trending the right way. Malik is back to on-court activities, individual workouts, so he can be, reevaluated here soon. So reinforcements are coming. And we play the Clippers, and then we have another game with Minnesota in there. We play the Nets. We say hi to Jordy again. I'm excited for that matchup to see how the Fernandez-led Nets are looking, and then maybe
the Thunder.
Yeah, we got the Thunder in there, so it's like we got a tough stretch. We play the Blazers again too, and they're going to be a completely different team than what we saw last time because guys are back and healthy. So we got some tough games, and if we have DeMar and Domas to help, it's going to be huge, especially with OKC now that they lost Chet for a significant amount of time. Like it's going to be a little different. So we went 2-2 this next stretch. It's hard to say like what kind of record we'd hope for, especially since we don't know for sure who's going to be there. But we got the Golden State Warriors treatment of last year, where we're seeing Minnesota 3 times in the first month and a half, and by the time we face them next, both teams could be in a different spot. Situations are going to be different. I'm just hoping that Fox comes out aggressive. And I'm interested to see what the rotation looks like once these guys come back.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be key. I mean, it's going to be Fox. Fox needs to set the tone for this team through this next stretch of games. When I'm thinking about this Clippers game, which is the next game that the Kings play on Friday, it's the Gold Cup game, or it's the NBA Cup game. The last time around, I didn't get to watch that Clippers game, and I'm so thankful. Let me say that. I'm so thankful I didn't have to watch that horrendous game that I heard all about. They were like 3 of 26 from 3.
Yeah.
So just with that alone, let alone the shooting struggles and everything that they were dealing with that alone, they only lost that game by 9 points. So when I'm looking at that Clippers team, I'm not sold. I'm not sold that they're a good team. And I'm also not sold that the Kings are going to continue shooting 3 of 26 from 3. Like, I have a pretty good feeling that they're going to knock down 4 more, and 4 more would mean a win. So if they just continue playing that way. So as far as the Friday matchup against the Clippers, obviously you're going to be in LA. You're going to be in the new arena. It's going to be a really cool atmosphere, I'm sure. I think the Kings are going to use that atmosphere to their advantage, and I think that we're going to see them come out and get their first win in the cup. And I'm excited to see how Fox continues to attack it. Like I said, I think he's our key during this stretch coming up. And I want to see him continue to be the same amount of aggressive, because like I said, he will completely open up the entire game for everybody else. And at that point, you're going to see guys like Keegan, who have been struggling this year shooting the ball. They're going to start getting even more open looks. And at that point, like, if they're not falling, just go sit down. I'm convinced that if any guy on this team is getting open looks, they're going to start knocking them down, because that's just the team that they have.
Yeah, and I think, again, getting this, we definitely need Domas for this matchup, because Zubac always presents a physicality that's really hard to match.
So
and
weird.
even if they do cancel each other out, it'll be important, because we were seeing lineups here where Kevin Herter was our power forward, and I'm like, we're gonna have some trouble if we go that small, and have to do that for an extended period of time.
The lineup against the Timberwolves before Domas got injured, the starting lineup. Did you remember that when it was Alex Len at power forward and Domas at center? Never again, Mike. Never again, man.
Yeah, and that's not Alex Len's fault, right? Like, he was trying his best, but we came back from down 20 because, again, he started the game that way and he started the second half that way, and we went on
Mm-hmm.
12-0, we were down 12-0. They went on 12-0 runs after having Len in. And it's better to stagger, and it's better to have just one of them. We don't need the Twin Towers out there. We don't have to. We got to play to our strengths. We can't play to match them. I know Julius Randle poses an
Exactly.
issue, but just throw Keegan on him and just hope for the best. If he beats you, then that's fine. But we need better matchups. Like we have we have Keon and De'Aaron to guard Anthony if we need to in a pinch. And I know even if De'Aaron's taking the bulk of the offense, he's not going to sit down from that matchup. So, I think that he's not going to do that again. I think we're going to have guys in the availability. It'll be a much more even matchup next time we face them. But for the Clippers game, I'm just hoping that, yes, Fox stays aggressive. It's going to be interesting in that arena how the free throws are. I've been hearing a lot of things with the way they have
With the wall.
with the wall set up with the fans right there. It's supposed to be a really tough free throw shooting environment. So I'm excited to see how that looks too. But I think you're right. I think the main reason we lost that last game was because we couldn't shoot the ball. And I don't think we're going to run into that issue as dramatically as it was last time. So I think it's going to be a game where if we just muddy up the game the way we can and force James Harden to beat us, then, we're going to have a really good shot. So I hope that we just got to hang on until this team gets back together to find a rhythm again. And that's going to be the other part too, is like any rhythm we've truly had going into the season got disrupted because these guys are out for an extended period of time. But I hope that, everything everything doesn't kind of come to a halt once these guys come back. But that's the thing. It's our most talented players. It's not like a key role player. So I'm excited to see just how we look at full strength, because we haven't really seen a full strength team in rhythm all season long yet. So
Yeah, and that's going to be the key too. Is how quickly do they find that rhythm? Because missing any games, it's going to pull you out of rhythm to an extent. And whether that takes 2 quarters or 2 games, that's yet to be seen. And if it takes 2 quarters and you figure it out by the third and you're cooking, then we're all good and gravy, right? But the next 3 games, they're tough matchups. The easiest game is the Brooklyn Nets, and even that I wouldn't say is easy. I don't think that there's very many easy teams this year. And if you're running into easy teams, it's a team like Philadelphia who is just discombobulated from top to bottom. And then aside from that, it's injury-riddled teams, right? But these next 3, Clippers, then you come back home, you're playing the Nets and Jordy Fernandez, and then you're staying at home and you're playing the Thunder. And the Thunder, this is a game I want to talk about for 2 seconds before we wrap it up, because I think this game means the most to this Kings team, from at least from a fan perspective, because I know it's not a cup game, but this is by far the best team that you're playing so far this year. And so when you all off season, we talked about where we want this team to be, where we want them to end up. We're in the rankings, right? And you and I talked about we can see them as a top 4, definitely a top 6 team. And we've played with that idea of a top 4 team. And, when I go to bed and dream at night, I picture them at number 1, number 2. So this matchup against OKC, this is a team that is and has been cooking the West. And they're 11-4 right now. They're essentially tied with the Warriors, but they're about a game ahead of them. So this is a top dog, not just in the West, but in the league. And this is a team that went the distance last year. So what a way to kind of establish yourself as in terms of your ranking, right? Getting a win against an OKC Thunder team at home, where that fan base, they know what this OKC team is. We know what they are. We've watched them for 2 years now, really 3, but really the last 2. This is a good team. You get this win, that's going to be massive amount of motivation going forward, and just building momentum through the early stages of this, next 15 games or so. It's going to be huge.
Yeah, OKC is definitely going to be like the barometer matchup. Like we played Phoenix and they had a great record, but they were missing Durant. And then the second game, they were missing everyone except Devin. So
Right.
it was like, it wasn't the truest matchup of a top dog. In Minnesota, we've lost 2 close ones against. Like LA, we lost a close matchup. Like some of these better teams that we've been matched up against, it just hasn't gone our way. So we definitely, and a team like the Clippers would be a good start too. If we can, start there, that'll give us momentum going into a game like OKC. And with the Clippers game, man, like I'm like, even if DeMar and Domas aren't there, in the sense of, like, we're rested. Like, we were playing a tough stretch of games. We were playing a lot of games, but we got a break from Monday to Friday. Like,
Yeah.
and like you're just driving down the way. Like, this isn't like a long East Coast road trip. Like, I have some high expectations coming into this game where these guys are going to be extremely fresh, and I expect this team to be aggressive. So if they can just start off strong, then we're going to be in a good spot going into the game against Brooklyn, and then we can use that game to catapult us and get more momentum going into OKC. And OKC, if we beat OKC, then we're going to feel way better going into that next Minnesota matchup too. So, no, I agree. OKC, was one of the most hyped teams because of how deep they are. And if we can take care of that team and take care of a team that has an MVP caliber player on their team, even without Chet, they are the deepest team in the league for a reason. They got Hartenstein in the offseason. They have pieces on pieces 1 through 12 on that roster. So
Exactly.
it's a very good team and a really good test to see our resiliency and how, if we can really just hang with the big boys. And I know we can. It was a split series last year. We can compete with this team. We have the guys to get in Shea's way every now and again. Shea's still going to get his, but we need to slow down Jalen Williams. Like, this is just going to be a good matchup. I am excited to see how we do against OKC for sure.
Yeah, so we've got a good stretch of games coming up. So the next time we talk, we'll probably rehash them, and hopefully we're talking about 3 or 4 good wins, and definitely get that one on Friday, because like you just said, I mean, you get a whole bunch of rest beforehand. Don't lose to the Clippers twice. The Clippers aren't good enough to lose to them twice this early on. I don't believe. So let's go out, try and smack them in the mouth early, especially out in LA, and try and just suck the air out of the building as best you can.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see. So hopefully we can keep adding to this win tracker. We have been adding as we go. So, even if it's bit by bit, hopefully we can just peel off a big run once we get these guys back. That would be the ideal goal. But for now, we will press on, and we are going to talk about some football. We're going to talk about the Eagles next. So we will be right back. All right, we are back to talk some Philadelphia Eagles. My dude, my Eagles, man, 8-2. Who would have thought 6 weeks ago that was going to be the case? I was out here throwing tantrums, like freaking out. I'm so spoiled, bro. But they're
Must be
blessing
nice.
me. They had a very awesome win against the Commanders. How did you enjoy that game?
It was awesome. It really was. I was the hype was real, and it lived up to it. It went exactly how I anticipated, except I probably thought there was going to be about 20 more points collectively that were supposed to be scored out there, but it's all right. It was a gritty game.
All right, I agree. So for those who didn't check it out, got a post game pod out there, and I discuss all the fun details from the win. Saquon's awesome impact and all that fun jazz. But I did want to take a moment to talk about one specific moment of the game from this game, because I mentioned, I could have brought in, talking about how Saquon scored 2 touchdowns in 28 game seconds, or the defense absolutely popping off with Zach Bond making big plays, Reed Blankenship getting that interception. That's great. But there was one play that I didn't mention in this game that was arguably a season-saving play. And it was when the Eagles were on their way to score that first touchdown, Jalen Hurts hit Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert caught the ball. He was wide open in space, and he was taking the ball down. And then he gets sandwiched by 2 players, and I forget, I think the last name of the guy was Martin, punched the ball out. And oh God, I thought it was going to be a major fumble. And then Grant Calcaterra comes in, swoops in, saves the day. We get the first down. The drive continues on like normal. And, it could have been a huge turnover for the Commanders had they got the ball back. So shout out to Grant Calcaterra. He wins the moment of the game for this week, because there was a game with so many moments, but it was an underrated moment that, had it gone the Commanders' way, we still could have ended up winning that game, but that would have been a huge momentum changer, because we were, for the first time in that game, finally driving and actually getting momentum. and we were inevitable. We were eventually able to close out that drive and the game in general. So shout out to Grant Calcaterra. That was fun. But yeah, that was the moment of the game that scared me the most and definitely had the biggest impact when I looked back on it. So I enjoyed it.
It was a hustle play, and yeah, I was nervous when I saw it happen because I was like, oh boy, like you said, they just started getting moving, with the ball, and then that happens, and I'm like, oh, okay. So shout
Yeah.
out to Calcaterra for jumping on that, and season saving. Your words, not mine. Game saving for sure. Game saving for sure.
I feel like every loss is like a season-ending loss at this point. Whenever I watch this freaking team, dude, it's a nightmare. But, well,
Do you
I
want
guess
to talk about the Niners, or is that later?
you're right. You're right. You're living the nightmare this year. So I guess we'll talk about that in a second. But you know, I don't want to spend too much time on the Commanders game because that was last Thursday. The Eagles are on a mini bye. We play the Rams next week. I'm excited about that. But before we get into the Rams of it all, because it is an important piece, and a super underrated game on what is remaining on the schedule. For those who saw the thumbnail for everything like that, the topic that I really wanted to address was, can the Eagles get the 1 seed here? Um, you know, 6 weeks ago, before we entered the bye, I was like, oh man, we'll just focus on winning the division. We'll get into the playoffs that way. But now we're entering this world where we're 12 weeks in, 11 weeks in, going into week 12, and the Eagles are 1 game back. The Lions are 9-1. The Eagles are 8-2, and the Vikings are also right there at 8-2. But when we look at just the Lions specifically, they're the teams to chase. So I wanted to take a second and just compare the Lions schedule to the Eagles schedule. And there is some interesting things here. Both teams, by the looks of it, and I guess Ben and I can talk about whether, the Niners are the level of threat to them as they would have been had we talked about them a few weeks ago. But both teams have what some would say is 4 losable games. 4 games that I'm like, okay, this could go either way. Yes, both these teams, well, maybe the Lions get more of this luxury of being called the better team, but there's a chance that both teams don't win out. Because if they do, that's pretty impressive. If the Lions go 16-1, that's going to be pretty freaking impressive. But there is a world where both of these teams could go 15-2. And what a tiebreaker would mean, the only tiebreaker the Eagles could get if both teams finish 15-2 is if the Lions lose in 3 weeks to the Packers, because the Eagles had beaten the Packers and the Eagles win out again. The Eagles have to win out, obviously, to make this happen. But the Eagles' remaining schedule is on the road against the Rams this week, on the road against the Ravens next week, and then we play the Panthers at home, Steelers at home, Commanders on the road, Cowboys, and Giants. So we finish very light. So we have these 4 games, and the Panthers game's smushed in there. But the Rams this week, huge game, because if we don't beat the Rams, then we have to have a better record than the Lions to finish the season, no matter what. Because the Lions have already beaten the Rams. So we're playing this game now where it's a battle of common opponents. And the Lions' remaining schedule is at the Colts this week. Then they play the Bears, and that's a divisional game. The Bears might be crappy, but it's a divisional game, but it's at home. So that's a good shot. Then they play the Packers at home. And then they get the Bills at home. So they get 3 straight home games in Detroit. But the Bills and Packers are going to be the one. The Packers is a must win for the Packers for me as an Eagles fan. But the Bills game could be huge because the Bills are playing for the 1 seed as well. The Bills are going to come in there ready to try and take this win on the road. And then they go on the road to the Bears, on the road to the 49ers for back-to-back weeks, and then they finish at home against the Vikings for what could be a very crucial spot for the division. I want to ask you this first, Ben, before we really just get into the nitty-gritty. Do you think the Eagles have a legitimate shot at this 1 seed, or do you think the Lions are just going to pull off, maybe not win out, but do you think they will end up finishing with the 1 seed? What is your take, kind of how you feel watching both teams?
Well, I think the Eagles have a very legit shot at the 1 seed, but I want you to look at it from a different perspective because you don't need the 1 seed. The Niners had the 1 seed last year. Yeah, they went to the Super Bowl, but the 2 games before the Super Bowl, they were losing both of them. Well, NFC Championship game, they had no right winning, right? They had no right making it to the Super Bowl, but they did. So the reason I'm saying I want you to kind of shift your focus is look at the last 2 weeks that the Eagles play, and then look at the last 2 weeks that the Lions play. So the Lions, they've got us the week before, and then their last week is against, who was it again?
The Vikings.
The Vikings. So 2 games where, regardless of what Niners team you're seeing, it's a Niners team who's going to hit you, and it's a team that's not going to just like sit down. So that's going to take effort to win. It's going to take effort to beat a Vikings team because they're going to be right there in the seeding. The Eagles play 2 terrible teams in the Cowboys and the Giants. So whether you're fighting for seeding or you have something locked up by the last week or whatever, you have 2 lighter games. And that's going to mean a lot, especially if you can come out in one or both of those weeks and get a big lead early enough where the third quarter is light and you can sit your guys in the fourth. Sure, you want the home field advantage for all the playoff games. I totally get that. But if the NFC runs through Detroit, you go to a freaking dome, and I'm going to take you guys over the Lions 10 times out of 10 at that point.
Really, you would actually take the Eagles on the road against Detroit.
The way that this Eagles team has looked the last 3 weeks, I would take them over the Lions. I think that defense would absolutely stifle what the Lions are doing offensively.
So let me put it, I guess the take I really wanted to come in here with is I actually have a gut feeling that whoever takes the 1 seed in the NFC will end up representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. And I think here's a difference, because the Niners, the only difference I have to offer here is the Niners live in the beautiful state of California, where the coldest weather we're really going to receive on a football game is going to be the lowest 40 degrees. Again, this is the coldest, but you're in the Bay. It's going to hover in like the 50s and 60s. It's going to be a football game that's going to be comfortable. You go to Philadelphia in January, and it's going to feel like 20, 10 degrees. And to get Jared Goff out of the safety of that dome that they've been playing, mind you, in all but like 2 games this year, they've just been comfortably playing in domes. And that's part of who they've been playing too, because the Vikings also play in a dome and things of that nature. But they're playing teams in a dome a lot this year. And Jared Goff is an inside quarterback, not an outdoor quarterback. And I just think that when the pressure's highest, if the playoffs have to go through Philly, I like the Eagles' chances better than I would. Not that because we went to Detroit in 2022 and it was a high scoring game. Like, we did an awesome job when we went to the Super Bowl that year. But Detroit isn't what it was now. I think what I'm afraid of with Detroit is the continuity that they have with their coaching staff. The way this team is just decimating some of these teams. But the Eagles have played well on the road. I'm just afraid that if we have to go into Detroit this year and try to win for the and try to compete for a spot in the Super Bowl, that's just going to be a tough ask. I think the Lions would be favored. I would say, with how these teams are playing, it won't be like a 3-point spread like a normal one. They would be like a 4.5, 5-point favorite for Detroit, unless the Eagles win out and it's like a 15-2 scenario type thing. Then I would probably have a different story. But I think I just have a feeling that whoever wins this 1 seed will have the best chance to go to the Super Bowl.
You've convinced me on that. You've convinced me on that. And when I think about it a little further, I said I would take you guys 10 times out of 10. I would probably do 5 times out of 10. It's probably a toss up at that point. But the way that the Lions have been playing this season, you might as well give it to them 80% of the time or 90% of the time against any given team. But that's kind of the respect that I'm giving the Eagles right now. Is the last 3-4 weeks of football that the Eagles have been playing has been at the highest level since 2022 when you guys went on that Super Bowl run. And that's the style and the caliber of team that you need to beat this Lions team. If you show up with the team that you had in week 2 and 3, GG's, don't even show up. Don't even get off the plane.
Yeah.
But weeks 5 and on, or week 6 and on, dude, get off the plane. Let's get to work. Because this is a team that I'm telling you, like the way that the Eagles are beating teams right now, it's not pretty, but it doesn't need to be pretty. Like they're finding ways to win in different ways, and they're finding ways to beat teams in different ways. One game it's defensively with an absolute like defensive showing, like outburst. The next it's Saquon going for an insane amount of yards and a touchdown, or however many touchdowns, and the next is Jalen Hurts using his legs or going for a crazy amount of yards without any interceptions. Like it's not the same ways every single week, and that's the style of football that is effective, especially when you get to the playoffs, because you need to have multiple ways to beat teams when you get to that stage, whether you're in a dome or not. You have to know how to beat a team in whatever way it takes.
Yeah, I think in the NFC, the two most physical teams right now are the Lions and the Eagles. And I do think
100%.
their smash mouth style, because the Lions have their version of Saquon with a two-man army of Montgomery and Gibbs. So like when we compare these teams offensively, you can go to a fan and say, okay, which roster do you want? Some people would argue, okay, Jared Goff has statistically been playing better. Some people would want Hurts, but some people would be like, okay, but the Eagles receivers are better. Okay, but the offensive line of the Lions have the slight edge this year. Oh, but who do you want, Saquon, or do you want the duo? And then you look at the defense. I do think now that Aiden Hutchinson is hurt and they lose Anzalone for a while, this Eagles defense is probably better than the Lions defense right now, but the Lions probably have the more consistent offense of the two teams. So if they were to link up, it would be a very interesting matchup. And it would be ugly. But I also think that, man, for me, if we could get them at home, if we can somehow secure this 1 seed, so I'm rooting really hard for the Packers game, obviously, because that would be the main tiebreaker that we have. We have to win this week against LA, or we could really just kiss our NFC chances goodbye. Even if we do win out from there, unless the Lions choke and lose some of these games. But the Packers, Bills, Niners, and Vikings are the games that could make the difference for the Lions. And the Rams and the Ravens and the Steelers are going to be the toughest matchups that we have left, and they are all coming in the next 4 weeks. The Commanders game is going to be up in the air, but I still think that we have that kind of big brother edge on them, and Jalen also plays very well in Landover over there against the Commanders on their home field. The Eagles are getting a gift this week because the Ravens are playing our third team, the Chargers, at SoFi. So the Ravens are also in LA this week, and the Ravens leave on Monday. So the Eagles get a day head start against Baltimore. So Baltimore gets one less day of rest, and they got to fly all the way back home too. So it's not like this advantage of the home field is going to be as intense as it would be on a normal week. So that will help the Eagles next week. And that's a tough matchup because this team, I actually don't remember the last time this team's actually matched up with the Ravens. So this is gonna be a tough matchup, and it's gonna be gross with Henry in them, and we'll talk about that, how we match up next week. I'm excited for that. But if we get those wins, so let's talk about the Rams here, because the Rams this is important. And listen, the Rams are 5-5, but they were decimated with injuries to the two best receivers. They were dealing with O-line injuries. Their defense has been doing what they can. They're a young defense. Matt Stafford has been still doing what he does best, even with these guys hurt. But now they're back, and they looked really good against the Patriots last week. At least offensively. Defensively, 22 points to Drake, man, that's a little tough. But it's going to be an interesting game because the Rams have a solid run defense, but they have a bad pass offense. But the Eagles might be without Devontae in this game. Devontae's been lingering with a hamstring injury the past couple weeks, and there is a chance that he might not go. He was not participating in practice. We'll see what he is the rest of the week, if he's limited or not. But last time A.J. Brown played this team, it was in the middle of his streak of consecutive 125-plus yard games. And I do have confidence that AJ would be able to make his presence felt. I do believe that, with Goddard, AJ, and Saquon, skill position-wise, that would be enough to offensively get the ball moving. So it's up to Jalen to just take advantage of this young defense and just try to make plays because their defensive front's legit. Even if they're young, Jared Verse has been playing out of his mind as a rookie. They still have Byron Young, who's their leading sack guy, and they hold running backs about 4 yards to carry. Like they're a legit run stopping team. So where we have to kill him is through the air, and obviously Devontae would be a huge help there. And defensively, week after week, these young corners are going to continue to get tested. And Quinyon, Cooper, Darius Slay, they had a great job. They shut the heck out of the Commanders' offense. But this is an experienced, talented Rams offense, and they're healthy. They got Kyron Williams, they got Cooper and Puka. I'm really excited to see how our boys do against Cooper and Puka because it's going to be it's a different team. And where I'm worried about this is the Rams kind of remind me of Baker Mayfield in the sense of how they can attack you and they're not afraid to take the short stuff. So I'm very interested to see the kind of offense that Fangio or the defense that Fangio rolls out this week, because Stafford doesn't fold under pressure. If we want to blitz him, he's going to make us pay. And not that we blitz that much anyway. We're not really a blitzing team. So we try to execute without blitzing. I'm interested to see how our corners hold, and Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean need to play well because Sean McVay, his offense, they're not afraid to attack over the middle of the field. They're going to try and generate short plays and make them into chunk plays, and they're a balanced team. So the Eagles' offense might need to step up in a big way this week, even though, Jalen Carter played insane against them last year. That was kind of his breakout game as a rookie. And it's not like that offensive line got that much better, but Rams, I'm looking at our defense as the part that might fold a little bit this week. But we did get the extended bye, and I don't know, and the Rams had to come back from New England, right? So they traveled all the way across too. So and they also played last Monday, so they were coming off a short rest, fly across the country, fly back home. So, and it's SoFi, so it's gonna be or whatever. Is it SoFi? Their stadium name? So it doesn't matter who they play, they're always the road team there. So Philadelphia, there's going to be a lot of green in that stadium. So I am excited for that. But there are things that this Rams team is desperate. They're trying to fight in this division that is clunked up, and they have a legit chance of taking the division if they can peel off some wins here. This is a must win for the number 1 seed and not a must win for our division standing. Like, I think we'll be good there, but if we have aspirations of if we want to try and get this 1 seed, it starts with LA.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think beating this LA team too, even without Devontae, I think would be huge in that step towards the 1 seed. I guess I'm just stuck. I'm looking too far ahead, and I shouldn't be doing that, but I'm guilty of this. I always am. I'm going to shift gears. That Lions team, I'm pretty locked on those last 2 weeks, and I think that it's going to come down to it, whether the Eagles win this week or not. I think that the Lions are going to kind of come down a little bit before the end of the regular season, and they're going to let a couple slip away. It's going to come down to those last 2 weeks for between you three. It's the Eagles, the Lions, and the Vikings. And I don't know how the Vikings are still in it, but they are. And respect to them. I mean, Sam's doing a hell of a job. That team is doing a hell of a job. They show up week to week. They take care of business, and they find ways to win. And it's similar to like the Eagles. They're finding different ways to win. Like I think they won a game the other week without scoring a touchdown.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's crazy to me. Like that any team can do that. And then the week before put up as many points as they did, or the week after. But it's going to come down to those last few weeks, and taking care of business now, not looking too far ahead is going to be the key to it. So yeah, you're going into SoFi. You guys are at home. SoFi is never a home game for the Rams. That's why they call it Rams House, because they have to make it loud and clear that it's not anybody else's house, even though it feels that way. I'm fairly confident. I think this is going to be a good game. I think it'll be a tight one. I think the Rams will keep it tight, and I think the Eagles will keep it tight too for reasons that'll kind of piss you off at times.
Yep.
But that's kind of the thing that separated the last few weeks for me with this Eagles team is that second half adjustment. Whether they're actually making an adjustment or not, they're coming out and executing better. And that was something that my team isn't doing, and something that the Eagles weren't doing for the better part of last year and then the beginning parts of this year. So making those adjustments at halftime and or sticking to your guns and just executing them better is going to be key, because this Rams team, they're going to come out and they're going to try and make noise early. But if you can shut them down and take away the things that they've been excelling in, if you can make Matt feel a little bit rattled, I know it's tough, but you can make him feel rattled. He'll execute, but if you can hold them to the short gains and force them to make 13, 14, 15 play drives, I think you stand a really good chance at winning this game.
Yeah, I think for me, the score that I feel for this game, I think the Eagles' offense is going to execute, but the Rams are going to hang in there. I think it's going to be like a 28-23 game. I think the Rams are going to make enough noise, and the Eagles they're going to have, even if they start off slow. That's the thing. This Eagles team, I think that's just the story this year. They take the punches in the first half of the game. Hopefully, another wild card is Jake Elliott. We're watching a few of these kickers this year, and we're seeing Justin Tucker miss everything he's taking now. Evan McPherson, and we'll talk about that in a second, I wouldn't say cost, but it was on him to make a kick. That was a tough kick, and he didn't execute. And he was a player that got the Bengals to the Super Bowl because of his ability. And now Jake is 0-4 from 50-plus yards this year. And that can't be ignored, given how some of the kicking has gone in the NFL this year. So if he can shake out of it, then I'm officially not worried about anything on this roster. But that when you know your kicker isn't as effective as they used to be, that changes how you approach offensively. But I do think that this home run hitting offense is going to take its body blows, maybe hit a field goal or two to start the game. It's going to look ugly in the first half like it always does. Our defense will hopefully keep us in the game. Maybe the Rams do take a lead, but then the Eagles are just going to pop off for 3 touchdowns in the second half, and then they're just going to put it away. But that because they've had a reputation this year of just kind of figuring out, okay, what is this defense running against our offense? Like, we're going to fail a few times, but now we have the recipe. Now we know where to adjust, and then we'll just kill you the whole game with it. That's exactly. So 28-23 is what I'm going to put down. I hope it's more. I hope it's a little more convincing, because that'd be very nice. But if to go on the road, win 28-23, and then take that back to Baltimore, I'll feel good about that.
So I have kind of a scenario that's going to play into why I have the score I do. So
okay.
I think that in the fourth quarter, it's going to be 20-17. You guys will be up 20-17. The Rams will be driving. At that point, the Eagles will have made Matt feel a little bit rattled enough, and he'll throw an interception. You guys will go down, put up a touchdown, 27-17 at that point. The Rams will try and do something to get down the field and get any points on the board. They might get a field goal just to try and, kick an onside. So I'll say I'm going to say 27-20.
That's
Eagles.
nice. I hope that your score is the one that goes to. That'll make me feel a lot better. But yeah, no, the possibility to get this 1 seed exists, and the fact that we're in this position, you probably could have asked every Eagles fan on the planet, and if you told them 6 weeks ago that we would be fighting for the 1 seed at 8-2 and peel off 6 straight, no one would believe you. I think we've shaken off a lot of the negative talk from last year, a lot of the whole collapse. But now this was the point last year where the collapse started to happen. But we can prove that was a fluke if we just continue to win games and put ourselves in a position, because this team feels different. Defensively, it feels different. Offensively, it feels different. We are leaning on our strengths in a way that we weren't in 2023. And Saquon allows us to do that more. And our defense, Zach Bond, Nakobe Dean, Quinyon, they allow us to do that defensively in a way that we just couldn't before. And we have a formula that's sustainable. Guys are learning the systems at its peak now. Like Vic Fangio took the training wheels off the defense. Kellen Moore's still trying to figure some things out, but Saquon's a cheat code right now. So we're getting the best Saquon season ever, and that's part of the thing that I don't want to waste. it's a feeling of the Niners of last year, in the sense of like, we cannot waste this opportunity when the season that is happening in front of us right now is probably the best we're going to be getting from him.
This
So
sucks.
it sucks. I'm definitely not taking it for granted, but it's definitely something that we need to be aware of. But yeah, no, but I'm feeling good. It starts with this week. Hopefully we can, hopefully I'm doing a post game pod and we're 9-2. So we'll see what happens there.
I love that.
All right. The moment you've probably been hoping we could put off as long as we could. We did about, we're an hour into the show now. Just about. So we got to talk about the Niners, dude. So I guess the question is, are they cooked? I want you to just, are they cooked? Take it away. Tell me what's on your mind, dude.
So yeah, let's start with the injuries. First of all, the injuries have been all over the place, right? You have multiple guys who are out for the season. You have guys who have missed extended periods of time. We still haven't seen Dre Greenlaw this year. His practice window is probably opening up soon, but is it too late? Just throughout the season, the story has been injuries left and right to key players. And so we've talked about it a little bit with the Kings. It's difficult when you're trying to establish an identity and get a rhythm early on in the season when your guys just aren't there. They aren't available. And obviously not having Christian McCaffrey up until 2 weeks ago is a massive hit. They were figuring it out with two other running backs who, since having Christian McCaffrey back, have touched the ball, 4 times? So I disagree with Kyle in that regard. I already talked about my plan, and I think I'm a better coach in that regard. I would have used them way better. But that's why I'm sitting back here on my couch, not making millions and millions. But Marcos, I think the Niners might be cooked, and it's tough. It's really tough for me to say that because you know what? I'm just going to shift gears and talk about my segment of I need to vent.
Okay.
I'm not having fun watching the Niners this year. I haven't watched one game this year and genuinely had a good time watching it. And that hurts because obviously last year we talk about the 17 regular season games. It went so well. And the Niners were blowing teams out left and right. And you saw this style of execution from the Niners that was just, it made me sit back on my couch and giggle because it felt like a team that couldn't be stopped. This year, it started with the offseason. We had a frustrating offseason from a Niners perspective. I mean, we were on here talking about it every week. It was something new with the holdouts, with the hold-ins, with the contract situations. Season, we get those wrapped up and I go into the season and I spew out of my mouth and I'm like, the Niners are good now. We got everybody locked up. We're going to go on a run. Slow start to the season. And I'm like, okay. We're a mid-season performing team. We're going to be okay. We're in the mid-season. We're 5-5. And we just lost to a terrible Seahawks team. And I will not get off that hill. That Seahawks team is a joke. Geno is not a good quarterback. That Seahawks team is fraudulent. There's no reason why the Niners should have lost that game. And by that standard too, you've lost 3 division games, which you were leading in the fourth quarter of in every single one of those, which is, by the way, Marcos, the first time since the merger in NFL history that any team has done that. Been leading against 3 of their division opponents and lost those games in the fourth quarter. So, yeah, dude, I'm not having fun watching this team this year. And it sucks because I was so high on them. Coming off the Super Bowl loss, obviously I have my own form of depression, but I was confident that this team would figure it out and they wouldn't be a victim of that Super Bowl hangover. But I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it again. And it's tough.
Okay. So there's a couple things to unpack, right? Because everyone around the Niners, anyone talking about them, fans, the biggest question is why? Why is this team collapsing? Is it the injuries? Is it bad coaching decisions? Is it players not executing? Is it or is it everything? Like, is it a little bit of everything? Like, the Niners have shown multiple times this year games, where the offense can be churning, going up and down the field. The defense gets turnovers, they get stops. And then all of a sudden, they don't finish, or they're missing kicks, or they're not converting in the red zone, or they let go of a really bad touchdown or a bad drive. I want to start with some of the veteran leaders that you've talked about, because you and I believed in this too, right? You shared the sentiment. You're like, these guys have been there and done that. They've been in this tough spot of losing 2 Super Bowls. This core has guys like Debo, guys like Kittle. Then you add Trent Williams, you add CMC. You got these aging veteran players, and yeah, they're aging. They're gonna get another year older next year. But do you think it's time for just a bit of a shift, in the sense of not everybody, but some of these guys, some of this core 4, 5, 6 guys that you have? Is it time to see them go, to make way for a new wave to maybe adjust a bit? Whether it's like Kyle getting new pieces to play with, things switching up, and I guess I'm talking specifically about guys like Debo, guys like Trent, guys that are, Debo's just not the same player. And Trent Williams, he's a Hall of Fame player, but he's limping now, and it just doesn't appear that he's going to be able to stay healthy anymore. Like, do you think there's a way for this team to get better by losing some of these dudes?
Yeah, I think at this point, you look at how much talent is on this team, injured or not, and just locker room presence. This team shouldn't be 5-5. And when we talk about those leads that they blew in the fourth quarter, a lot of them came down to 1 or 2 plays, that's football, right? We know football is it really does, a majority of these games come down to 1 or 2 plays that decide a game. But those were plays that we saw the Niners making last year. This year, I feel like it's almost a lack of mental. I don't know. It's something like this. It's almost like they're overlooking these moments, like those moments, those key moments where they need to make a play, and normally they would have every mental and physical thing ready to make that play. They're not there this year. And I don't know if it's a lack of respect for those moments, because you have to have a form of respect for those moments to make those moments count. I don't know what it is. But I think there is a world where, yeah, moving on from like a Debo Samuel, somebody who can actually separate on their routes, moving on from the highest paid left tackle in the league, who is at this point consistently banged up. I think that at that point there might be just a new form of, I'm looking for the word, I guess, just energy in the building, right? Because I'm not in the building, but from an outside perspective, you can kind of feel that they're still feeling that Super Bowl loss. And we're weeks and weeks past that now. And I know it's the Super Bowl hangover year, but you feel that energy. You feel that they feel their best shot was lost. Mm-hmm. And it's out there at this point. Like it's clear as day to me that this team, they've peaked. The peak didn't work. It might be time to reevaluate things. What those pieces look like, I have no idea. But yeah, specifically you brought up Debo and Trent. So I'll stay on those 2 guys for a second. Debo, he's having a career low right now, and especially in those yards after catch, which is really what he was best at and most effective at. He was never great at separation on routes because he's never been a great route runner. But we never asked him to be a great route runner. We asked him to be great in the middle of the field. And that was why Kyle schemed everything to get him open in space. Because if he's open in space with just a safety or two to beat and maybe a linebacker or a corner, whoever it is, he's beating them. He'll probably beat 3 of those 4 guys by running through them. But he just doesn't have it anymore. And I can't just put that necessarily on Debo, because then when I look at the play calling, every time that Debo gets the ball, he's already got those 3 guys on him. Why? Because it's readable. You know what to expect. You know what's happening, because we've seen this now for 5 years. Teams just kind of know how to play against Debo now. And with Trent, you just throw the same guys at him multiple times throughout a game, he's going to get worn down. He's getting up there in age. He's still one of the best left tackles in football, but his availability is one of the weakest for me right now. And I know he's been out there, but last year we missed him for 3 games. This year he's banged up. He's playing on an ankle, and he'll be playing on an ankle this week that is not great. And it's just something at this point you got to kind of look at yourself in the mirror as an organization and think, are our best days truly behind us? And will we benefit from moving on from these guys, getting out of their pay, and getting new faces in the building, new energy like I just talked about, and trying this rebuild around a quarterback who you're going to be paying for, the next 4 years? Is this something that is this the kind of shift in momentum that you need? Is a rebuild? That's the question. But the season's technically not over. We'll talk about that in a second, but that's just my take.
So, okay, on that point, because you mentioned your quarterback. So for Brock's situation, the Niners technically do not have to pay him this year. He's just eligible, right? Given where this team's at, and again, the record is not entirely on him. Like, he's dealing with inconsistencies from who he's playing with. Like, I totally get it. Coming from a guy who watched, Devontae and AJ be gone and watched Jalen play like garbage for 2 weeks. Like, it affects your quarterback. But are you as confident to rush to the table this offseason to sign Brock for what is going, for a potentially, maybe it's not Dak money. Maybe it's not the 60. Maybe it's not exactly the 60. Maybe it's like 50 to 55, somewhere in that range. But are you signing him this offseason? Or are you hoping that maybe they try to do one more year of retooling with the money that they would potentially save by not signing him this offseason? If that makes sense.
That part. So I would hold it off. And it has nothing to do with Brock. It's not that I don't trust Brock, because I'm ready to pay Brock. I really am.
Okay.
But the reason I wouldn't want to pay him yet is because you can retool. Because you can flip these guys for picks and then flip those to go and get somebody. I haven't done a deep dive in who's out there because I've been depressed. I've been on my couch crying my eyes out every Sunday. But we'll talk about what those options look like after the season's over and after the Eagles win the bowl. But the idea that, let me put it this way. Would it be dumb? Would you think it would be dumb for the 49ers to pay a lot of money to a quarterback who I believe deserves it? For the sake of this exercise, let's say you deserve he deserve, let's say you think he deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
We pay him that money and essentially saying we're starting a rebuild when we could have waited a year, but it's okay. Let's just start the rebuild now. But there's still a chance to run it back one more year. Does it make sense? Do you see what I'm getting at? Like, what would you do?
I think the smart way, because they've, especially now with recently, they've been giving out contracts. Lenore just got paid. They're trying to pay some of these good young pieces. And not to mention, this year you guys hit on your draft class. Your whole draft class has potential. Ricky, we'll see what he becomes. He still has time.
Pooney's one of the best guards in football right now.
He's been awesome. And then you got Mustafa and you got Green. Like, you're getting pieces in key spots.
Yeah.
What if you hit on next year's draft? What if you get a few more? What if you get another O-line gem? What if you get another guy to help Nick Bosa on the defensive front? Like, And then you have the money that you saved from not signing Brock now to maybe shore up the potential loss of Charvarius Ward, or get another corner, or get another defensive lineman, because I don't know, your Hargrave, is he going to be healthy next year when he comes back? Like, and how long? Like, to get more reinforcements. Offensively, you're going to be fine at receiver, because Ayuk hopefully will come back and get back to form, and then you'll have Pearsall, and then keep Kittle, that's great. Keep McCaffrey, that's fine. But and then the question is, how would Kyle use the backups? Because you have Mason and you have Grendo, like that room is set, and I like that. So then my attention turns to, I think, to answer your question, I would wait. And
Makes sense.
you and I talk about Brock. I've been sold on Brock. I was not early on because I wasn't sure. I had no clue how to evaluate him as a player. But what I'm seeing from Brock, and I know you and I have talked about this off pod, but I've noticed a similarity because our teams kind of took a similar approach to how we built a team. Now, the Eagles got Saquon, even though they already signed Jalen to this massive contract. So that was kind of its own thing. It was kind of reversed. The Niners traded 3 picks to get Christian McCaffrey into the building, but they took that chance. They brought in all the skill pieces to help take the pressure off the quarterback. So the Eagles, then the Niners had a very similar path to kind of get where they were over the past 3 years. The Eagles in 22, Jalen was incredible. He had a breakout year. We got A.J. Brown, and we made it to the Super Bowl. Why? Because Jalen was dynamic with his legs, and he was improving as a thrower, and we had an awesome offensive system, and our defense was top 5 in the league because it wasn't on the cornerback side of things, even though Bradbury and Slay were playing well, but we had a historic season sack-wise. So we made it to the Super Bowl, and the 2023 last year, we kind of had that same wave. We ran it back. We had the same crew. Nothing changed. Guys got a year older. Production was not the same. The system changed on Jalen. Jalen got dinged, and Jalen tried to become a quarterback that he was not. The strengths that he was leaning on that made him successful were not available to him because he was hurt. He was not able to run the same. So he turned into this pocket passer, and that's just not what he's best at. I hate when you say it. When you text me, you're like, he's so good with his legs. I hate when you say that, because I know it's a semi-condescending statement, but it's also factual that he is at his best. What makes Jalen Hurts special is his legs.
Mm-hmm.
Because this year, first 4 weeks, it was kind of more of the same. But although Jalen was showing flashes of his old self in terms of being able to look explosive and dynamic again, what really took off during this bye week was him taking the pressure off him by bringing in our weapon Saquon and using him, and not throwing the ball 40 times a game with Jalen, but 20, 25. Don't turn the ball over. And now you're explosive and using your legs again. I think the Niners are kind of on a similar track, and Brock's kind of taken a different approach, but they kind of got to the same spot. Niners went to the Super Bowl last year. What made them so successful? All these pieces were healthy, and the defense was insane, and Brock was making use of all these weapons that he had at his disposal, and Kyle Shanahan was dicing people up.
Yep.
And then made it to the Super Bowl, didn't happen, didn't work. Sucks. This year, run it back. Only in a different way, you guys had to deal with holdouts. McCaffrey's hurt. Injuries helped this team regress to the mean. And what made Brock special in 2022? His ability to just take what the defense gives him, deliver the ball accurately and quick, out and on time. He was able to scramble, but he made plays. He was able to scramble at the right times.
Exactly.
This year, he can still make those throws, but he's running a lot more. And not that I'm like, listen, he's putting up good numbers when he's running. It's not like he's not faster or he hasn't improved as a runner.
Nobody's not taking the checkdowns that he has.
Exactly. He left he's leaving a lot of yards on the board. And we talked about this where the whole narrative around Brock was like, oh, he's a check down merchant. But he has the stars to do it. So you watch Brady.
Check down.
You have these guys who have been successful. Mahomes never gets crap for it. He does it. Brady did it forever. Like, you have your check down guys, that you have these players, you're paying them the money, let them cook. So that doesn't make him a bad quarterback. You're making the right decision. That's your job. but now we're seeing him get married to the, big plays. Like, let me just chuck the ball down the field, no shorter than 10 yards, let my guys make a play because I can make that throw. And we know you can make that throw, Brock. But if you're not mixing them up, they're going to play you different. And then instead of taking the check down, he's scrambling, which leaves him open to get. He's not Jalen Hurts in terms of his size and his ability to absorb hits. This dude's kind of frail in that sense. Like, he's gotten stronger, but he's now what he was day to day after the game because he's getting decked.
Still is.
You don't want Brock getting decked.
Yeah.
So he went away from his strengths, but I also think it was a product of not having the same level of security, not playing with the same guys all year.
Exactly.
And having to put on this cape in order to keep this team afloat offensively. And that's led to mistakes, and that's led to holding the ball too long, uncharacteristic of Brock. So what if next year, everything, kind of handles itself. McCaffrey lasts the rest of the season and he comes in healthy. We have slightly different position. Ayuk is back healthy. You got Kittle. The O-line takes slight improvements. The defense gets younger and better. And all of a sudden, what if the Niners just start rolling again? Because that's not out of the realm of possibility. This team is still good. And if Brock just goes back to what he does best, and that's making the right play and being accurate while making back-breaking scrambles at the times you need it most, not just because it's your first option, I could see this team just being right back to where they were when they make it to the Super Bowl. But so that I noticed the similarities, and I'm not afraid to pay Brock because I feel that way. I don't know about you.
No, and I mean, you nailed it on the head multiple times. Because one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is that Purdy's just quietly trying to prove something that he's already proved, and that's simply that he's not a check down merchant and that he can make plays on his own. Well, Brock, you've already proved that, and now you've got your security blanket. The team's got their security blanket back in Christian McCaffrey. Use him. And that was what drove me nuts, like in this last game, was the amount of times CMC was perfectly schemed up to just run a nice little like block route. So where he sets the block or he fakes the block and then runs up and then sits in front of the linebackers. And it's wide open. Like, it was open probably 7 or 8 times. And I'm not even kidding.
Right.
I don't have to go back to the film to look at that. I remembered it. And so, and he only hit him on those like once or twice. And I was like, it's there so many times. And there was one where it was there and Brock takes off. Like you said, he takes off and goes on a run and he runs in between like 3 guys and where he could have gotten like slammed. And at that point, I'm like, dude, if Purdy goes out, I said to my girlfriend, I'm like, if Purdy goes out, we're done.
Yeah.
Like, there's no chance. It's over. Like, call it wraps. So yeah, I think there's a real possibility this Niners team can be right back and running next year. But there's still 6-7 weeks left football here. And it's not impossible. It's not impossible for this team to win the next 7 games. And it's going to be hard, but it's not impossible. But you have to get back to the style of play that you were beating teams with last year. And where that starts is just relying on each other and also relying on yourself to make a play. Because I feel like at times, you pointed out Yadam last week, letting Geno just, I guess, essentially run into the end zone at the end of the game.
Oh,
I didn't see that because I was freaking out and punching walls and like throwing a mad tantrum. But I was, when I think about that, it makes me think about all the times this season there's been not just one player, but a unit that doesn't make a play when you need to most. And I look at how many games this team has lost by one play. It really just comes down to the one play. And that's where I'm like, if you can just shift the mentality, because you've been terrible all season long, but you've still hung in almost every single game and had a chance to win every single game. And if you can somehow flip that switch, it has to happen this week against the Packers. There's no more waiting. I'm not saying it's going to be next week or the week after. No, it's this week. Because if it's not this week, you're done. You're really out of the picture at that point.
Yeah.
If you flip that switch and you start winning games the way that you were last season by making that last play or by building yourself enough of a lead where you don't have to make a play like that. You don't have to come out and get a stop, a crucial 4th down stop, or go for it on a crucial 4th and 4. if you can just essentially not shoot yourself in the foot, which is what this team has been doing all season long. If they can go out and just play their brand of football they've been doing so well for the past 5 years, this team has a chance.
Yes.
They're not going to win. They're not going to win the conference, but winning the division, very much out there. All 4 of the teams in our division could win it.
Mhm.
Like, that's how tight it is. And that's also how trash all of us have been. Every single one of the teams in the NFC West have left games on the table that they shouldn't have. And it just boils down to availability, but mental focus as well. Like, you need to be able to show up and make a play when it matters. And this is something that the Niners have been doing so well for a number of years. And that's why I'm so frustrated not having fun this year, because this isn't the brand of football that I'm so used to watching this Niners team play. So my key for this game against the Packers, you're going into Green Bay. It's not going to be an easy game. Green Bay's a good team. Green Bay's been giving teams havoc all year long.
And they're coming off of a freaking blocked field goal win.
Right. You cannot take this team lightly. And you have to go out there and execute from the jump. Because, look, last year you asked me how I'd feel if the Niners went down by 7 points. I'd be like, well, I'm nervous because we don't really play that well from behind, but I'm confident because our guys, they can get it done. If the Niners go down early in this one, I'm not confident. But if the Niners go up early in this one, and then coming out of halftime, emphasis on halftime, because this team in the second half has been terrible this season. If out of halftime, the Niners make the right adjustments and shut this team down and don't let the Packers do what they want to do to you, then you're going to win the game. And that's, at this point, you've done so much already. You're 5-5. It's not a great record. It's not a terrible record. You're in the mix. You're 10th in the NFC. If you can just take it a game by game, take care of business where you need to take care of business, you can find yourself right back in the wild card position. And that's what I've been saying for every single year, is the Niners just need to make it to the wild card, and they've got a shot at the Super Bowl.
Not wrong, especially some of these guys get healthy.
Right.
So the question is, what matchups are you looking for in this game where you think, okay, if we execute here, we're going to have a good shot to win?
Honestly, it seriously just comes down to Brock making plays to Christian McCaffrey. He needs to take those checkdowns, because this Green Bay team will give you the checkdowns. Up front, they're going to rush you, and they're going to show you blitz. And this is something that, if you take the checkdowns and let Christian McCaffrey find some momentum and find a groove, he's going to light them up. And as far as a run game, I would really love to see Jordan Mason and Isaac get some runs. But Kyle is the kind of coach that his starters are his starters, and you won't tell me otherwise.
It's so dumb, dude.
It is, because, and what frustrates me, I'm gonna go on a little rant here.
Yes.
What frustrates me the most is you have 3 different looks that you can give a team on the ground. You have a guy in Christian McCaffrey who is shifty from right to left to backwards to forward. He can do essentially anything you want, and you can throw him out there in random spots and then move him around with pre-play scenario. You can confuse defenses, right? But then you have a guy in Jordan Mason who's a baby Marshawn Lynch, who will just run right through you, run right by you. Like, if you're not careful, he's going to go for 80 yards in one play. And then you have a guy in Isaac Guerrero who he's not big, and he's not necessarily shifty, but straight up the gut or straight out the side, that guy's gone. You can't catch him. So you have somebody who's shifty from right to left. You have somebody who can run right through you, and have a guy who's just an absolute speedster. You have 3 different looks you can give a team. Not just like, well, this team sucks with fast guys. No, you can give them 3 different looks in a single game. And that's so hard to do as a defense to adjust to those. And that's the thing that's driving me nuts, is we're giving them the same looks over and over, and it's predictable. So I want to see, in this game, I want to see Jordan Mason at the very least touch the ball more than 5 times. I want to see him touch the ball 10 times.
Okay, so I have just a quick sidebar in the sense of one question I didn't think that we touched up on enough when we were kind of talking about the state of this team. How worried are you about Kyle Shanahan in all this? Like, do you think that, with the way he handles the personnel, there was times Jordan Mason, he only had 2 carries last week, but he was extremely successful when he ran.
Mhm.
So, like, how much of and his decision to pass the ball, I know Debo was wide open like in the fourth quarter to try and put away the game. I know they got stopped on that first down and it was, negative yards and you want to try and pass the ball to make this happen, but like how much of Kyle Shanahan, like, is it just a bad, stretch by him? Do you trust him to get you back to where you need to be? Because he is part of the reason this team is where they are at right now.
100%.
Obviously, some of these losses have come down to like a missed kick here and there. That's not his fault, but like, things like that. How confident are you in Kyle Shanahan right now?
I'm gonna put it out there, and I'm gonna tell some of these Niners fans off for a second, because Kyle Shanahan is the best coach that this team has had in years. I want Niners fans, real quick, to anybody who has asked for Kyle Shanahan to be on the hot seat or be out of office, I want you to think back to what this team looked like before Kyle Shanahan. Now that you're thinking back to it, remember how bad they were? Yeah. Yeah. No. So Kyle Shanahan, ever since coming in here, has completely changed the way that this team looks at the game of football. And as far as getting out of his own way, he's a young coach. He's not Andy Reid. He doesn't have years and years and years under his belt. He's got stuff to learn. He's been to some bowls. He's choked some bowls. He's choked a lot of games in his career. But so did Andy Reid. So I'm looking at Kyle, and the biggest thing for me is just he needs to get out of his own way. And I don't know if it's an ego thing. I don't know if it's a young thing, if it's like him just locked in on his ways. I'm set here, don't tell me what I need to do kind of thing. I'm going to do things my way. But there's something he needs to figure out. I am very confident in Kyle. I don't want him on the hot seat. I'm not calling for him to be on the hot seat. If this team were to lose out the rest of the season, I don't want him on the hot seat.
Right.
I really don't. Because who out there, you're much better at this than I am right now. Is there a coach out there right now that you would say is better than Kyle Shanahan with this Niners team? That's keeping in account Bill Belichick, right?
Right.
But with this team, who this core is, what this core's identity is, and the style of team that's built right now. Is there a coach out there that's better fit?
No, I don't think so. Like, you got
That's
Mike.
where I'm at.
Yeah, you got Mike Vrabel. I think like when you look at the options that are out there, no one is as. I mean, you could argue what you want about like potential guys like Ben Johnson and things like that, but like, would he make this Niners teams better today? No, I don't think so. Listen, Kyle Shanahan's history is what it is. And like you said, Andy Reid has had a long and storied career, but none of Andy Reid's statistics of him being as successful as he has happened until Patrick Mahomes came into the picture and they created something together and he had an amazing defensive coordinator. And I'm not saying that Andy Reid isn't a good coach, but there was a part of Andy Reid that he made it to plenty of Super Bowls, he made it to a Super Bowl, but had a ton of playoff visits here in Philadelphia. Yep. And even in his first few years in Kansas City before Patrick, they blew huge games in the playoffs and he struggled and lost. And now we think of him as one of the best coaches ever, if not the best, because of what he's accomplished now. So I guess the question with me is, because for you is, I agree. I don't think there's a better coach out there right now for this team than Kyle Shanahan. And it's been 8 years now. 8 seasons of Kyle Shanahan, 2 Super Bowl appearances, obviously 0-2, but how much, so I guess my question is, are you okay? What I guess for me is because it is pretty divided. There are people who, especially, it's hard because it's such a toxic culture when it comes to our coaches, right? Like people with Sirianni, he's like the winningest, he has one of the top 5 winning percentages through his first 4 seasons, and people still wanted him to be fired after the Cleveland game. So after they won, so it's like people will treat coaches so differently as if they could just be replaced. Right. And I think for me, like, if let's say 5 more years of Kyle Shanahan happens, he gets to another Super Bowl, or maybe like 3 out of the 5 years you're in contention, you're in the playoffs, conference championship, 1 Super Bowl appearance here. But what if you lose again? Like, at that point, would there be a level of fatigue where maybe we do need a new voice? Maybe maybe we need to figure something out here? Or would you keep riding with him if you're reaching a level that you're almost there every time still? You know what I mean? Because this team's still competitive, but then they're just not getting the job done. And by that point, if it's 5 more years, it's a whole new core. So it's like, what's happening there, all that stuff. It's all predicting, but like, do you feel confident that Kyle Shanahan will eventually get the job done for you guys?
I mean, if it's hard because it's situational, right? If he has a full squad and he rolls into the playoffs and rolls through the playoffs, and then when it comes to the big game, he's up 10 again with a full team, nobody gets injured, and you blow it, I'm gonna start thinking about things. Because at that point, yeah, there's fatigue. You've done this so many times now. It might be time to just change it up, just to get a different feel. Even though you still got the core players, let's see what we can do with a new guy. But I'm confident, man. I think that Kyle can get it done here. I think it boils down to you really did. You nailed it again once on the head with Andy Reid finally getting his defensive coordinator and finally getting his quarterback and finally getting whatever, right? I'm not saying that Kyle needs a defensive coordinator and a quarterback, but I'm saying that there's pieces missing for Kyle's system that still need to be put in place for it to work perfectly. And even last year, with as killer of a run that the Niners were on and calling it a peak, I don't think his system peaked. I think this core peaked, but I don't think his system has peaked. And I think that a lot of what we've seen with his time in the Falcons as offensive coordinator and Washington and Niners, right? Really the Niners, you've seen the player core put together. But when you get that defensive coordinator, when you get a guy like Bob Saleh, well, he gets taken as a head coach. It's like, okay, well, let's rebound. Let's get another good guy in office. Oh, D'Amico, he's awesome. Let's get D'Amico in here. D'Amico, let's roll, bro. Head coach. Okay, Steve Wilkes, not a head coach. He's fired because it wasn't good enough. Didn't fit my system. Whatever the case. Okay, Nick Sorensen, not sold. Honestly, the way he's going, could be out next year. So
Jeez.
I think Kyle's pieces away from his system getting us to the bowl and winning the bowl. Because obviously getting to the bowl, I'm not going to say is easy for his system and what he's doing, but it seems possible every year. It's not a far-fetched imaginary thing to get back to the Super Bowl, right? You've been a contender for a number of years with Kyle Shanahan. I think it's just a matter of getting the right personnel to fit his system. And once you get that Andy Reid place set, I think Kyle can get it done.
Okay. You know what? I think we'll leave that part of the conversation there because yeah, that was the part that was important. I think we touched up on a lot of the key guys, including Brock and this, you know, I think that Kyle Shanahan is a huge piece of it. And I do agree that he has despite, struggling in games in one score games and even with leads in big games and this year, struggling with leads in general, it's been tough. But, I guess the argument I think where people get upset is that great coaches, in other people's opinions, do more with less. But I also don't think that isn't the case for Kyle. I think that he has shown before that he has done more with less, especially at the QB position. So I think it's one of those things where I don't think he gets credit for that as much as he does for when he's truly successful. So no, I can see why you believe in Kyle Shanahan. And I'm also like, I don't think you guys have a better option out there that makes as much sense. And he has the experience now where I think that the game management of it all, I think there will be a time where something will flip for him and he will start figuring it out. I think there is a product of he is getting in his own way and just wanting to be so stern with him succeeding in his way that sometimes as coaches develop, they need to look at the picture a little bit differently. And I think that's going to be his next, evolution as a coach. So I'm interested to see if that happens. But that was a good take. I was curious to see how you were feeling about Kyle. So this game, let's go back to the Packers game because that's this week. Your guys aren't out of it. You've laid out pieces for what you need to do. What's the score that you're giving in this game.
It's going to be tough. And every part of me wants to take the Packers winning.
Right.
No joke. Because, injuries just running down a quick list. Kittle's banged up. He will play, he said. Trent Williams with the ankle. Bosa with the hip. He's a 50-50 shot. I would be surprised if he plays. That's massive.
Yeah.
Purdy's got the sore right shoulder. He's considered day-to-day. So those are the main ones on top of more. It's worrisome. So if they're going to get it done, it's going to have to be an offensive shootout. Because defensively, I don't see how you can slow down any team right now without Bosa. Because Bosa is essential to what this Niners team does defensively. And without Bosa, you're taking away 60% of that defensive unit in a lot of ways. So I think it's going to be a shootout. I'll take the Niners because I'm faithful to the Bay.
Love it.
I got Niners winning this one again like a shootout. 28, say 24.
Okay. So I'm going to ride with the Niners one last time because this if they lose this game, it's going to get pretty bleak and their schedule does not get any easier.
Mm-mm.
And it's going to be very hard to root for them or say that they would win over some of these teams that they're going up against.
Heard.
I agree that it is going to be more offensively. I think it's going to be 28-24. Yeah, I think that sounds right. I also think that this could be a game where Jordan Love's feeling confident coming off the Bears game. He has been very up and down this year, turnover prone. Still, he says he's finally feeling as fresh as ever from the injury that he suffered back in week 1. So I still think that he is prone to turnovers, and I do think that there's a Geno Smith style of play in him where he's not afraid to let it rip. And he might miss a throw that might end up benefiting you guys. Maybe Malik gets his pick this game. BT Dubs, any update on Travarius? I know that obviously his daughter dying, super personal, take as much time as you need, but is there any update on when he might be back?
He's back with the team. As far as being cleared to play, I believe I heard that he's planning to play Sunday.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that because I don't actually know for sure, but I think I heard that he's playing.
Okay, that would be huge. He did, with the time off, he gets extended rest. Again, rest in peace to his daughter. That's awful news. But it's good to hear that he's back with the team. I'm glad he had some time with his family. But okay, that was good to know. I was curious to see how the defense looks, but I mean that helps. This is a tough Packers trio that any one of those guys can get going at any time. So it's a matter of hopefully it's not Christian Watson this week. He popped off last week for 150. Without Bosa, it's going to be hard to pressure. It's going to be hard to stop Josh Jacobs on the ground. It's going to be a Fred Warner needs to explode type of game to keep this defense together. So yeah, I'm hoping for the Niners 28-24.
Love it.
All right. Any final thoughts before we pivot here? This was good, dude. I knew we had a lot to break down this week with our teams because of the stakes. Now that things are opening up, the picture is becoming more clear on what needs to happen. So any final thoughts before we transfer over here?
Let's talk about our Chargers.
Yes, sir. So we are here on our Chargers check-in, and dude, I'm going to keep giving you credit for now because they are doing great, and they came off of a very good win against the Bengals. And listen, I don't want to be on the Bengals hating train of saying like, oh, the Bengals have only won 4 games. Are they really a good team type of thing? This offense is a great test. Joe Burrow played insane. They came back from down 21. So they're, had the Chargers lost, it would have been like, man, you blew a 21-point lead. But Jim Harbaugh's teams are well coached. They don't fold under pressure. And they were able to lead a game-winning drive. How are you feeling about the Chargers now after a good win like that to put them to 7-3, dude?
I'm hyped for them because they needed to have a season like this. They've had some bad seasons for a number of years now, and considering where this team was at going into the offseason, considering where they're at now, we talked about what this matchup meant last week. I mean, Burrow damn near had 400 yards, dude. He had 356 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, save Joe Burrow at this point. But that the point I'm making is he balled out and they still found a way to win. And I know they blew a lead. A lot of things had to go the Bengals' way for that to happen. A lot of things. And there was some kind of uncharacteristic things that the Chargers had happen, but ultimately they got it done, and that's what mattered. They're very much in the playoff picture.
All right, so I want to talk about real quick because we're about to learn. We've learned a lot about them in that game because that was a true test for them. But now their schedule gets difficult. Now is where we learn everything we need to know about this team. The next 5 weeks, they got the Ravens this week, obviously on Monday night at home, which is going to be a huge game, especially for me as an Eagles fan. Hopefully they beat them up a little bit. Then they play the Falcons. Falcons have been up and down recently. Then they got the Chiefs, huge matchup. The Bucks, and the Bucks are starting to get healthy again, so that's going to be that's going to be a Baker Mayfield team trying to fight for the playoffs because the Falcons are selling right now. And then they got the Broncos, who are also frisky. These 5 matchups could be the difference of them making the playoffs, or actually, because in the AFC, their wild card spot the Dolphins might actually have a shot given their crappy record. So I don't think they'll fall out of the wild card unless they lose every single one of these games. Then that's a different conversation. But if they come out of this next 5, 2-3, 3-2, then we're talking about this team making the playoffs and being in a wild card spot with a legitimate chance of maybe stealing a game. How do what are you looking for? Let's just keep it this week because they have a tough stretch, but they play the Ravens. How confident are you that they can upset the Ravens? Because this would be an upset. The records are different, but the Ravens, where people thought the Ravens were going to be versus where the Chargers are going to be, this would be an upset. How confident are you against the Ravens this week for the Chargers?
It's going to be tough. But I think when I really think about this matchup, it's a big game for both teams. And I look at the Harbaughs, both of them, really good coaches, and both of them are looking to make a statement, getting the win over the other, right? It's been a number of years since that's happened. Well, I think Jim's going to have the upper edge in this one because this Ravens team, they're inconsistent. And one thing that I've seen from the Chargers this year has been a form of consistency that you can build off of. I know the Ravens are 4 right now?
7-3. Oh, the Ravens 7-4. Yeah. 7-4.
Ravens are 7-4 right now. So they have a winning record. They've found ways to blow teams out, but they've also lost some games that are like head scratchers. And you're like, how did you lose that? So I'm looking at that team and I'm looking at the games that they've played versus what the Chargers have played. And I'm just thinking that this moment is going to boil down a little bit deeper for the Chargers. And I think ultimately it's going to be a battle of offenses. I don't see how either defense is going to really make a huge impact, especially the Ravens. The Ravens defense is horrendous this year in comparison to last year. So I would be surprised if this game if either team is under 20 points in this one.
All right, I agree. This is going to be the Chargers are going to have to show out offensively and keep up. I think Lamar, all the negative connotations they had last week of, oh, we didn't use Derrick Henry enough, so you guys lost the game because you didn't use Derrick Henry enough. And then they're going to try and use Derrick Henry, but this is a perfect Lamar Jackson bounce back game. He's just tough, and to expect him to be bad multiple weeks that's a tall task. And the Chargers defense is good, but they have the offense to pick this Chargers defense apart. So it'll be this is going to be a good test. This is going to be which Harbaugh brother is going to have this team ready to go. Both teams are in a really good spot that a win here would solidify a lot of things for both teams and keep them in, especially for the Ravens. They need this because the Steelers are stacking wins all of a sudden, and they cannot afford to fall behind if they want to avoid the wild card.
By the way, shout out to you for that because you were high on the Steelers. We fought about it. We went into the ring about which team we were going to follow. Either team would have been a lot of fun to follow. So
yeah, no, I'm happy that both of our takes ended up well there, considering all the other bad takes. Jets, the Jets are bad. But the Ravens can't afford to lose. So both teams are going to be desperate. But I do think the Chargers are susceptible to, oh man, we're riding high. So we'll see. Well, I'm interested to see how they build momentum. Like, how can a win like last week, can this be the catalyst for this stretch run for this team? And it would, a win against Baltimore would be huge. And it would be huge, especially for if Baltimore has to go and try and play Philly next week. It's just gonna be a tough stretch for them. So I'm excited. If I had to put a score, the Ravens are 3-point favorites on the road, and I wanted to pick this as one of my games, but I didn't want to do it. So, do I believe that the Chargers will win? I can't do it. I will say that the Ravens eke this one out. And it's also, I think my favorite score of the week is going to be 28-24. I think it's going to,
It's a good score.
It's a good score. I think it's just how I feel with some of these teams. Like, I think both defenses are going to make some plays, but I think the Ravens are going to be more desperate than the Chargers are. And I think they're going to come out and, respond given how poorly they played last week. I think this is the bounce back game for the Ravens for me, but it'll be a good fight by the Chargers.
You're a freaking hater. That's what you are.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to open up our betting favorites here, our covers, with the first cover of the week for me. And that's going to be the Chargers flipping the script and getting the dub against the Ravens.
I love that.
I think the Chargers are going to find a way to get it done. I know it's going to be a higher scoring game. It's going to boil down to those offenses. But look, I'm taking the underdog in this one because I believe in that underdog story.
Hey, dude, you believed in this team since the beginning, and I'm glad that I'm glad you're sticking by your take. So I got to be the hater of this team because I believed in them, but I also thought they were going to be a 5-12 team. So hey, I'm wrong. So I'm happy about that. I'm glad we got proven wrong. So for my first betting pick of the week, it's going to be the Denver Broncos against the Raiders. The Broncos are 5.5-point favorites on the road. The Raiders aren't good. They're, God bless them. They're just trying to get through this year. And, at this point, they should be trying to get a better draft pick. So I think the Broncos 5.5. I think the Broncos are going to win by a touchdown. And Bo Nix is coming off the best game of his career. I'm feeling pretty good about that one.
The Broncos are looking better and better each week.
Mm-hmm. I know. And gosh, I was wrong about them too. I thought Bo Nix wasn't going to be the best pick for them. But hey, Sean Payton's proven me wrong.
Yeah. Well, my next pick is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 4-point favorites over the Cleveland Browns. And look, I didn't want to admit it for a number of weeks, but this Steelers team is cooking, and they're one of the better teams. I don't see how the Steelers could win this game by only a field goal, essentially. I think it's going to be around a touchdown, 6 points or more. So, yeah, I got the Pittsburgh Steelers covering this one.
Yeah, it's going to be an ugly, not that fun game to watch. But the Steelers will definitely cover, even if they kick 6 field goals like they did last week, because the Browns aren't going to score. So, it's definitely going to be, that's a good pick. I wanted to pick that one too, but the 4 always freaks me out. And Thursday night's always weird, so I never know how I feel about those. My next betting pick is going to be the Vikings on the road against the Chicago Bears. I'm picking a lot of road teams. They're 3.5-point favorites. And I'm like, that's it? 3.5 points? Like, the Bears are reeling. Like, yes, they hung in there with the Packers last week, but the Brian Flores is going to light poor Caleb Williams up. And I'm not really, it's going to, do I want the Vikings to be 9-2? No. But do I think they're going to win by at least a touchdown? Yeah, I do. So I have the Vikings winning that one.
That's fair. So my last one, Cardinals versus the Seahawks. Seahawks are 1-point favorites. I hate both teams, but I hate the Seahawks just a little bit more.
I love that.
And I can't tell you how many times I will just continue to say, I'm not sold on the Seattle team. I don't care that they beat us. Seattle team's garbage. I got the Cardinals winning this one. Simple.
I wanted to pick the Cardinals, but I felt like it would have been in bad taste given the state of the Niners and where they were at. Cardinals have been my NFC other team all year long, and I hate that because it's Jonathan Gannon, bro. So it's frustrating.
Well, but your other team is the Cardinals. My other team is the Commanders. So it checks out. It's okay.
Nah, that's fair. All right, my final betting pick of the week is going to be the Buccaneers on the road. I
Mm.
picked all road teams this week against the New York Giants. Giants are in a free fall. Literally, basically fired Daniel Jones. They're playing Tommy DeVito. I'm excited for that. You know, his agents got to be excited to get the attention again. But the Bucs are getting Mike Evans back in the fold, and I do think that that is going to propel this offense, find a rhythm for Baker. They're going to comfortably win this game. They're only 5.5 favorites. I know they're on the road, but this just has a game where they're going to win by like 10 plus, I think, because the Giants are just an awful team. So I'm feeling good about that one.
Yeah, that's interesting because I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants came out and kept this one close just because of that changeup. Because when they switched to Tommy last year, didn't they keep it tight for a couple games?
Yeah, they won 3 games with him, and
That's right.
it messed their whole draft stock up. Yeah, Tommy, they found a way to do it. So Dable's confident in him. I'm not. I would. And listen, we've talked about this already. Outside of Cooper Rush, the other two backups that took over their first games, they won. You know, with Deshaun Watson and I believe whoever. I think it might have been the Saints. Or there was another backup. Oh no, it was Andy Dalton when he took over for Bryce Young. So then they had won. So I'm like, okay, there's a world where this could work. But Tommy DeVito, I mean, I don't know if he has that enough juice to win against the Bucs. So we'll see what happens there.
Love it.
All right, my dude. Any final thoughts before we head out here?
Let's go, Kings. Light the beam.
Light the
Bang,
beam.
bang,
Yes, sir. Fly Eagles fly. I'm rooting for your sanity this week, my dude. Hopefully the Niners can give you a win, and hopefully the Kings can add to their win total. Hopefully the Eagles have a shot at this 1 seed. So, with that being said, this was episode 66 of the Behind the Back podcast. We appreciate you guys for sticking with us for I think this was our longest episode ever because we really had to get into the nitty gritty this week. So it was a lot of fun. But you can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. Hit us up on any of our social medias that are located up above for you audio listeners out there. The links to the descriptions are down below. Please give us a like, subscribe, rate, follow, comment, all that fun jazz. We are growing each and every week, and we appreciate the support. We love you guys so much. Thank you for helping us out and making our dream come true. Hopefully, our teams can continue to exceed and play well, and maybe revive Ben's happiness because I'm missing the energy. I miss it. But with that being said, I am Marcos Conan Negron. Beside me here, as always, is
Benny the Jet.
We love y'all. We will talk to you next week. Peace.